No one warned Elias Crow that the job application would change the fate of 2 species. The posting had looked harmless. Simple. Almost boring. Labor assistant needed in remote settlement. Housing provided. Long-term stability guaranteed. After years of drifting between asteroid docks and underpaid station repairs, Elias didn't ask questions. Humans rarely could afford to. He packed his tools, signed the contract, and boarded a civilian transport headed for a world most star maps barely labeled. The planet was called Kael'Tur. From orbit, it looked peaceful. Wide green valleys. Soft blue oceans. No visible cities. No weapons platforms. No signs of war. That alone should have made Elias suspicious. The transport released him at a small landing pad carved into stone. No guards. No scanners. Just warm air and the smell of unfamiliar soil. Waiting for him were 3 tall, slender aliens with pale silver skin and eyes like liquid glass. They wore simple robes and carried no visible tech. One of them stepped forward. "Human Elias Crow," the alien said calmly. "Welcome to Hearth Village. We are grateful you accepted." The translator implant rendered the words smoothly, but the tone felt careful, measured. Elias slung his bag over his shoulder. "Yeah. Happy to work. You said agricultural maintenance." "Yes," the alien replied. "Among other duties." That pause lingered too long. Hearth Village was small. Circular homes grown from living stone. Fields of glowing plants that responded when Elias walked near them, folding slightly as if sensing him. Everywhere he went, villagers watched. Not with hostility. Not fear. Expectation. He noticed something else by the end of the first hour. There were no children. And no adult males. Every villager was female-presenting, similar in build but different in markings and posture. When Elias finally asked about it, the guide walking beside him slowed. "Our population has changed," she said. "You will learn soon." The work itself was easy at first. Repairing irrigation nodes. Reinforcing soil stabilizers. Teaching them basic human mechanical shortcuts that saved energy and time. The villagers watched closely, fascinated by how Elias improvised with limited tools. "You do not follow predefined solutions," one of them observed. "Humans rarely get perfect conditions," Elias replied. "We adapt." That answer spread through the village faster than he expected. That night, he was given a private dwelling. Comfortable. Clean. Too prepared, like they had been waiting for him specifically. Sleep didn't come easily. Just before rest cycle, a village elder arrived. Taller than the others. Her markings glowed faintly along her neck and hands. "There is something we must explain," she said, "before you decide to stay." Elias sat up. "Sounds serious." "It is," she replied. "Our species is declining. Not through war. Not through disease. But through compatibility failure." She activated a hologram. Genetic spirals twisted in the air. "Our biology requires adaptive emotional resonance to sustain viable offspring. Long ago, our species lost that trait. We became efficient. Logical. Stable." The spiral dimmed. "And sterile." Elias frowned. "You're saying you can't reproduce?" "We can," she said quietly. "But the children do not survive past infancy. Something is missing." She looked directly at him. "Humans still possess it." Elias's stomach tightened. "You didn't hire me to fix machines." "No," the elder said honestly. "We hired you because humans form bonds under pressure. You connect. You persist. Your species thrives where logic alone fails." The room felt suddenly smaller. "You are not a tool," she continued. "You are a catalyst." Outside, the village lights pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. Elias realized then that the job offer hadn't been vague. It had been careful. And somewhere in the dark beyond the village, forces far larger than Hearth Village were already watching. Elias Crow woke before sunrise, not because of noise, but because of silence that felt too heavy. Outside his window, Hearth Village still glowed softly. The fields breathed light in slow waves. The air smelled like wet stone and sweet pollen. Peaceful, until he noticed the villagers standing in clusters along the outer ridge, all facing the same direction. They weren't working. They were waiting. Elias pulled on his jacket, grabbed his tool bag out of habit, and stepped into the morning. A woman approached quickly, tall and lean with a thin band of glowing marks across her cheek. Her posture was protective, like a guard trying to look calm. "I am Sarali," she said. "Field keeper. Elder Varuan asked me to escort you." "Escort me where?" Elias asked. Sarali didn't answer right away. Instead, she raised her hand and pointed beyond the hills. A dark shape hovered on the horizon, high, silent, and wrong. Like a storm cloud made of metal. Elias felt his throat tighten. "That's not one of yours." "No," Sarali said. "That is a collector craft." He hadn't heard that term in years, but every spacer knew the rumors. The collectors were not officially a single empire. They were a network, rich, quiet, and endlessly hungry for rare biological resources. They didn't invade planets. They didn't need to. They bought, stole, or relocated what they wanted, and made problems disappear. Elias watched the craft descend slowly, as if it owned the sky. Sarali led him through the village toward the central circle, where Elder Varuan stood with the other leaders. Varuan's face remained calm, but the markings on her hands pulsed faster than normal. "You were truthful with me," Elias said, keeping his voice low. "Now be truthful again. Did you expect this?" Varuan's gaze did not flinch. "We feared it." "What do they want?" Varuan turned to look at him, and Elias saw something in her eyes that felt like guilt. "They want you," she said. "And they want us." Elias stared. "Why?" Varuan lifted a palm. A hologram flickered into existence. Medical data, fertility patterns, genetic spirals. Elias didn't fully understand it, but he recognized the pattern of exploitation. "Our crisis became known," Varuan said. "We asked other worlds for help. Some offered sympathy. Some offered nothing." "And the collectors?" Elias asked. "They offered a contract," Varuan replied softly. Sarali's jaw tightened. She looked away like the words tasted bitter. Varuan continued. "They promised to stabilize our population if we surrendered our village autonomy and allowed them to manage reproduction." Elias felt a wave of cold anger. "You mean breeding programs?" Varuan held his gaze. "Yes." "And you refused?" "We refused," she confirmed. "Because we are not livestock." The collector craft landed beyond the ridge with a smooth, arrogant grace. A ramp unfolded. Figures emerged, tall, armored, masked. Not soldiers in the traditional sense, but private enforcers. Their armor had no insignia. No nation. No shame. At their center walked a different kind of figure. He was shorter than the armored guards, wearing a robe of dark fabric that shimmered like oil. His face was visible, pale, sharp, and smiling. He didn't need a weapon. His confidence was the weapon. A speaker drone floated beside him and translated his voice into clear galactic standard. "Elder Varuan," he called pleasantly. "I am Kes Vault, authorized broker for the Consortium of Biological Preservation." "Collectors," Sarali muttered under her breath. Kes's smile widened as if he enjoyed the insult. "I see you have acquired a human," he said, eyes landing on Elias. "Excellent. That simplifies matters." Elias stepped forward a half step before Sarali caught his sleeve. Her grip wasn't forceful, but it carried warning. Kes's gaze swept the village as if he were scanning merchandise. "Your people have something rare," he said. "A genetic mechanism linked to emotional resonance. Quite valuable." Varuan's tone was flat. "We will not sell ourselves." Kes placed a hand over his chest like he was wounded. "Sell? No. No. That word is so harsh." He gestured to his guards. "We are here to protect you," he said warmly. To ensure your species survives. We will relocate the human to a secured facility. We will also relocate selected villagers for partnership programs. You will be compensated. Elias's stomach twisted. Compensated, he repeated, stepping fully into view. Kessa's eyes brightened. Ah! The human speaks. Elias forced his voice steady. You're not protecting anyone. You're buying bodies. Kess tilted his head like Elias was a child misunderstanding a simple lesson. Human, he said. Your species is famous for dramatic moral speeches. But let's be realistic. This village is small. Isolated. It has no fleet. No allies. Your refusal changes nothing. Varuan raised her chin. We refuse. Kess sighed and nodded. Then we will proceed under reclamation protocol. The guards moved forward. Sareli's hands clenched. Around them, villagers stepped back, but none ran. Their lights pulsed in nervous patterns. Elias's mind raced. He was not armed. The villagers were not warriors. If the collectors took him, the village would lose its hope and probably its freedom. If they resisted with violence, they would die and still lose. So what did humans do when trapped between impossible choices? They cheated. Not with lies. With creativity. Elias leaned closer to Varuan and spoke quickly. You have any communications? He whispered. Varuan's eyes narrowed. We do. Limited range. Anything that reaches the wider network. Varuan hesitated. Only an emergency beacon. Old. Unused. Where? Elias asked. Varuan pointed to a stone pillar near the village edge, decorative, but faintly humming with hidden power. Elias nodded once. His heart hammered, but his voice stayed calm. He stepped forward and raised his hand slightly, showing he wasn't a threat. Okay, he said to Kess. Let's talk. Kess stopped and smiled like a fisherman seeing a bite. Smart, Kess said. Very smart. Cooperation is the natural state of intelligent life. Elias walked closer, slow and controlled. He could feel Sareli's stare on his back, confused and scared. Elias kept going until he was only a few steps from Kessa's guards. Here's the thing, Elias said. You're right about one part. This village is small. But you're wrong about humans. Kessa's brow lifted. Oh. Elias spread his hands wider, like he was surrendering. You think humans are valuable because of biology, Elias said. That's not the real advantage. Kessa's smile thinned. And what is? Elias glanced toward the pillar. Humans survive, he said, because we don't fight fair. In one smooth motion, he dropped his bag, snapped a tool from his belt, and slammed it into the ground. A pulse of bright blue energy flashed outward, harmless, but blinding for half a second. Kess flinched. The guards hesitated. Just a moment. Just enough. Elias spun and sprinted toward the pillar. Sareli shouted something in her language and ran too, faster than Elias expected. Two villagers rushed to block the guards, not with weapons, but with their bodies and glowing distraction. Elias reached the pillar, ripped open the hidden panel, and saw the emergency beacon core, old tech, but still alive. Kessa's voice rose behind him. Stop him. Elias didn't stop. He slammed his palm on the core and shouted, Varuan! Whatever this does, do it now. Varuan appeared beside him, robes flying, her face tight with decision. She placed both hands on the beacon and spoke a command in her native tongue. The pillar screamed with light. A signal burst into the sky, not a simple distress ping, but a full-spectrum broadcast. It was messy, loud, and impossible to ignore. Elias could literally feel it vibrating through his bones. Kessa's guards froze. Cut it off. Kess hissed. One guard raised a weapon and fired, but Sareli tackled him mid-shot. The blast struck the ground, throwing up dirt and sparks. Elias grabbed Sareli's arm and hauled her up. You okay? She blinked, shocked. Yes. But, what did you do? Elias didn't answer. He watched the sky. Because the collectors had made one mistake. They assumed Hearth Village was invisible. But that beacon was not a private channel. It was an open call into the galactic network. A loud, public scream that said, "A small species is being harvested. A human is here. The collectors are here." And in space, the fastest thing was not a ship. It was a rumor. Kes recovered quickly. He straightened his robe and forced a smile, but now it looked strained. "That was foolish," he said. "Do you think anyone will come? Do you think anyone cares?" Elias stared at him. "You don't know humans," he said quietly. "When we see a bully, we don't ask who's winning." Kes's eyes narrowed. "Then you will die with them." The collector guards raised their weapons again. Varroan stepped forward, hands glowing brighter than before. "No," she said. "Not today." Elias didn't understand what she meant, until the ground under the village began to hum. The fields pulsed. The living stone walls shimmered. Hearth Village was not just a village. It was a machine. A hidden system buried into the land. Sareli's eyes widened. "Elder, are you activating the old defense?" Varroan's voice was calm, but the light in her markings surged like fire. "We swore never to use it again," she said. "But we also swore we would never be taken." The stone beneath the collector's feet shifted. Thin lines opened in the earth, like seams in armor. Elias felt the air change, heavy with energy. Kes took a step back, suddenly uncertain. "What is that?" he demanded. Varroan looked at him with cold clarity. "A human brought us hope," she said. "And you brought us fear." The village began to rise. Not in a dramatic explosion. In a slow, unstoppable motion, like a sleeping giant waking up. And Elias realized something terrifying and incredible at the same time. Hearth Village was never meant to be defenseless. It had simply been waiting for a reason to fight. The ground did not explode. It unlocked. Stone seams widened beneath the collector guards, not to swallow them, but to pin their boots in place. Energy lines crawled across the village like veins waking after a long sleep. The homes, the fields, even the paths began to hum in a low, steady rhythm. Elias felt it in his chest before he understood it. "This place was built to survive," he whispered. Sareli stared at the rising structures with disbelief. "We were told the old systems were legends." Varroan did not look away from Kes' vault. "Legends are truths we hide when we grow afraid of ourselves." The village center lifted several meters into the air, supported by smooth pillars of light-solid stone. Defensive lattices formed overhead, transparent but unmistakably powerful. The collector guards raised their weapons again, then stopped. Their targeting systems failed. Red warnings flickered across their visors. Kes's calm cracked for the first time. "This installation was not declared," he snapped. "You violated interstellar compliance." Varroan's voice carried without effort. "You violated our existence." One guard tried to force his weapon to fire manually. It disintegrated in his hands. Elias let out a slow breath. "That's efficient." Sareli shot him a look halfway between fear and awe. "You are enjoying this." "Not enjoying," Elias said. "Recognizing good engineering." Kes recovered quickly. He always did. People like him survived by adapting just enough. "This changes nothing," Kes said sharply. "You cannot fight a consortium. Even if you repel us today, others will come." Elias stepped forward, standing beside Varroan now instead of behind her. "That's where you're wrong," Elias said. "You didn't just threaten them. You broadcast yourself." Kes frowned. "What?" "The beacon," Elias continued. "You think it was just a distress call? No. It was a story." Varroan nodded slowly. "A story of refusal." Elias turned to the villagers, who stood watching in silence, their lights pulsing brighter than Elias had ever seen. "Stories spread faster than fleets," Elias said. "And humans are very good at telling them." As if summoned by the words, the sky rippled. "Not with ships." With signals. Elias's implant pinged rapidly, open channel notifications flooding in from every direction. Civilian bands. Free traders. Independent research guilds. Even a few military identifiers he hadn't seen since his service days. Someone was listening. Kes saw it too. His confidence slipped into calculation. "We will withdraw," he said carefully. "For now. But make no mistake, this village has marked itself." Elias smiled without humor. "Good." Kes turned to leave, but Varroan raised a hand. The ground locked again. "You do not leave with silence," Varroan said. "You leave with witnesses." Kes's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" Elias answered before Varroan could. "A message." Varroan nodded. "You will tell the consortium this. The Lyra people," she used the village's true name, "are no longer isolated." Kes scoffed. "And who stands with you?" "One human." Elias met his eyes. "One human is how it starts." Varroan lowered her hand. The ground released the guards. Kes didn't wait. He retreated toward the craft, his robe no longer flowing, his steps sharp and fast. When the collector ship lifted and vanished into the sky, the village did not cheer. They breathed. A deep, collective release, like survivors realizing they were still alive. Sareli leaned against a stone pillar, hands shaking. "We were nearly taken." "But we weren't," Elias said. "That matters." Varroan turned to him. "You changed the equation." Elias shrugged. "I pushed a button." Varroan's eyes softened. "You gave us courage." The next hours passed in urgent motion. Villagers reactivated dormant systems. Scouts monitored space. The old defense network stabilized into a protective field that shimmered like dawn glass. Elias worked alongside them, not as a guest, but as part of the system, rewiring interfaces, reinforcing redundancies, teaching quick fixes humans learned the hard way. "Your methods are aggressive," Sareli observed as Elias bypassed a control circuit. "They're survival tested," Elias replied. By nightfall, Hearth Village no longer felt like prey. It felt like a signal flare. That night, Varroan called a gathering. The villagers formed a circle, light reflecting off stone and sky. Elias stood at the center, uncomfortable with the attention. "You did not ask for this burden," Varroan said. "But you accepted it." "I didn't plan to stay this long," Elias admitted. "I was supposed to fix irrigation." A ripple of soft laughter moved through the crowd. "And yet," Varroan continued, "you stood between us and those who would own us." Sareli stepped forward. Her voice trembled but held. "We studied humans for biology. We misunderstood you." Elias tilted his head. "How so?" "We thought your value was compatibility," Sareli said. "We see now that it is choice." Murmurs of agreement spread. Varroan raised her hand again. "The consortium will return. Perhaps not today. Perhaps not openly. We must decide what we become." She turned to Elias. "Will you stay?" The question was heavier than any contract. Elias looked around. At the village that had trusted him. At people who refused to disappear quietly. At a future that suddenly felt bigger than his own survival. "I'll stay," he said. "But not as your solution." Varroan inclined her head. "Then as what?" "As a bridge," Elias said. "And a warning." In the days that followed, the beacon's signal echoed farther than anyone expected. Independent ships arrived first, traders curious about the noise. Then researchers. Then diplomats pretending not to be afraid of the word collectors. Every visitor heard the same story. A village refused to be harvested. A human stood with them. The collectors were forced to retreat. And wherever the story spread, something strange happened. Other small worlds started saying no. Elias watched the feeds late one night, his implant filled with headlines and chatter. "Is this because of you?" Sareli asked, standing beside him. Elias shook his head. "It's because people are tired." Sareli studied him. Humans do not just survive pressure, she said. You convert it. Elias smiled faintly. We learned that early. Far beyond Hearth Village, in places Elias could not see, the consortium held emergency sessions. Assets were re-evaluated. Routes were altered. One name appeared again and again in their reports. Human. Not as a commodity. As a variable. And variables were dangerous. As Elias shut down his implant and looked out over the glowing fields, one thought settled firmly in his mind. He hadn't come here to make a living. He had come here to start something. Something the galaxy wasn't ready for. The galaxy did not respond with war. It responded with fear disguised as paperwork. Within days, Hearth Village was flooded with requests. Diplomatic observers. Trade envoys. Scientific delegations. Everyone wanted access. Everyone claimed concern. Everyone asked the same question in different ways. Was the human the cause, or the symptom? Elias noticed it immediately. The ships that arrived didn't form a defensive ring. They formed a waiting pattern, keeping polite distance while scanning every surface, every signal, every human movement. They were measuring him. Sareli stood beside Elias on the observation ridge as another sleek cruiser settled into orbit. They watch you more than us. That's normal, Elias replied. When something breaks expectations, people stop trusting the rules. Varuan convened a council that same evening. Not just elders, workers, farmers, technicians. Everyone had a voice. That alone shocked the observers. This is no longer just our village, Varuan said. We are now visible. And visibility attracts predators, one villager said. Elias spoke next. And allies. But only if we control the story. Sareli frowned. You already sent the signal. That was the alarm, Elias said. Now we choose the message. The council listened. So Elias taught them something humans had mastered long before spaceflight. Narrative control. They did not hide. They did not threaten. They documented. Every attempt by the collectors was logged and shared. Every interaction recorded. Every biological contract exposed. The Lyra people did not scream for help. They presented evidence. Within a week, independent networks were broadcasting analysis clips titled, "A Small Species Resists Consortium Acquisition. A Human Emotional Adaptability Classified as Strategic Asset. A Collectors Accused of Silent Genetic Exploitation." The consortium denied everything. Which only made things worse. Then came the first test. A diplomatic vessel bearing neutral markings entered orbit and requested permission to land. No weapons. Full transparency. Varuan allowed it. The visitors were tall, crystalline beings whose bodies refracted light like cut glass. They spoke slowly, deliberately. We are the Aurelian Union, their speaker said. We do not seek ownership. We seek understanding. Elias stood nearby, arms folded. The Aurelian's gaze lingered on him longer than polite. You are the human, the speaker said. I am, Elias replied. You altered a stable extraction pattern, the Aurelian said. That is, rare. Elias smiled faintly. We're inconvenient like that. The meeting lasted hours. No demands. No contracts. Just questions. Not about fertility, but about decision-making under pressure. How do humans persist when logic predicts failure? One Aurelian asked. Elias answered honestly. We don't believe predictions are laws. That answer changed the tone of the room. By the next cycle, the Aurelian Union publicly declared support for Hearth Village's autonomy. That was the moment everything tipped. The consortium escalated. Not openly. Quietly. Trade routes near the system became unsafe. Supply delays appeared. Subtle pressure. Economic strangulation. Classic tactics. Elias watched the data feeds with Varuan and Sareli. They're trying to starve us without firing a shot, Sareli said. Elias nodded. Which means we're winning. Varuan looked at him sharply. Explain. If they could take us, Elias said, they already would have. This is them avoiding attention. And what do humans do when cut off? Sareli asked. Elias leaned back, eyes thoughtful. We improvise. Within days, Hearth Village changed again. Fields were reconfigured for efficiency. Energy systems were rerouted. Elias worked with the villagers to repurpose dormant tech into communication relays and micromanufacturing hubs. They didn't just survive. They exported. Simple tools. Medical stabilizers. Adaptive interfaces designed with emotional feedback loops. Other small worlds noticed. Requests came in. Not for Elias. For the method. How did you do it? How did you refuse and live? How did you make them back down? Elias answered every message the same way. We didn't win because we were strong. We won because we stood together before we were desperate. The consortium finally broke silence. A formal declaration accused Hearth Village of destabilizing galactic order. Elias laughed when he read it. They always say that, he said. Means they're scared. That night, Sareli found him alone at the ridge. You could leave, she said quietly. You have options now. Elias didn't answer immediately. I came here to escape, he admitted. Quiet work. No responsibility. And now? Sareli asked. Elias looked out at the glowing village, the ships in orbit, the growing network of worlds refusing to kneel. Now, he said, I feel useful. Sareli's markings pulsed softly. Then stay. I will, Elias said. But not forever. She tilted her head. Why? Because humans don't build movements by staying still, he replied. We spread. As if summoned by his words, a new signal arrived, priority encrypted. Independent systems. Coordinated timing. A proposal. A coalition of minor species wanted a shared defense charter. And they wanted a human advisor. Elias exhaled slowly. Varuan read the message twice, then looked at him. You began as labor, she said. You became a bridge. Now they ask you to lead. Elias shook his head. Not lead. Translate. Between what? Sareli asked. Between fear and action, Elias said. Between we can't and we'll try. The village lights pulsed brighter that night, not with fear, but with resolve. Far away, consortium analysts marked a new classification in their systems. Human influence event. Escalating. And for the first time in centuries, the galaxy adjusted its plans. Not because of a fleet, but because one human refused to accept a simple job. The coalition did not begin with speeches. It began with quiet arrivals. Ships came one by one to the edges of the system, careful not to look like a fleet. Small vessels. Old hulls. Improvised tech. Worlds no one wrote laws for and no one rushed to defend. They came because they had watched Hearth Village survive. They came because someone finally said no and lived. Elias stood in the council chamber, surrounded by beings who should never have trusted one another. Different biology. Different languages. Different fears. What they shared was simple. They were tired of being managed. Varuan opened the gathering with calm authority. This is not an alliance of war, she said. It is an agreement of refusal. A crystalline delegate tilted their head. And if the consortium responds with force? Elias answered before Varuan could. Then they'll prove our point. The room fell silent. You don't beat empires by matching their strength, Elias continued. You beat them by making their power expensive. Sareli watched him closely. She had seen this expression before, not anger, not pride, but focus. The look humans wore when they stopped reacting and started shaping outcomes. The plan was not dramatic. That was the brilliance of it. No attacks. No declarations. No hero fleets. Instead, every coalition world did the same thing. They opted out. They refused exclusive contracts. They shared tech freely. They recorded every interaction and made it public. They rerouted trade. They stopped being silent. The consortium responded exactly as Elias predicted. Too hard. Too fast. Threats were issued. Sanctions imposed. Assets seized. And every move only fed the story. The networks lit up. Why is a private consortium enforcing population control? Why are protected species declining? Why does resistance only begin after human involvement? Elias became careful after that. He avoided the spotlight. Let others speak. Let others claim credit. Because HFY was never about one human. It was about what humans unlocked in others. The breaking point came quietly. A small moon colony refused relocation orders and broadcast their refusal live. When consortium ships arrived, they found something unexpected. Observers. Journalists. Independent escorts. Aurelian Union vessels parked just outside legal engagement range. The consortium withdrew. Again. That was the moment the galaxy understood. Power only worked in the dark. Weeks later, Elias stood once more at the ridge overlooking Hearth Village. The fields glowed brighter than ever. Children played among the stone paths, real children this time. Laughing. Alive. Sareli joined him, holding a small device. The first confirmed stable birth cycle, she said softly. Elias let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. You did this, she said. No, Elias replied. You did. I just reminded you that survival isn't a permission request. Varroan approached, older now, but lighter. The consortium has withdrawn its claims, she said. Publicly. Elias smiled faintly. They won't stop existing. No, Varroan agreed. But they will hesitate. That was enough. Elias packed his bag the next day. Sareli watched him from the doorway. Where will you go? Wherever the next simple job is, Elias said. There are a lot of quiet worlds with dangerous problems. She nodded, understanding. Will you return? Elias looked back at the village, at the lights, the people, the future that no longer needed him to stand guard. Yes, he said. But not because you need me. Sareli stepped forward and placed her hand over his chest, a Lyra gesture of respect, not possession. Human Elias Crow, she said. You were hired to help us survive. Elias smiled. Turns out I was hired to remind the galaxy how. As his ship lifted from the surface, the beacon did not flare. It didn't need to. The story was already everywhere. A human took a simple job, refused to play a role, and showed the galaxy that strength was not domination. It was choice. And once choice returned, the galaxy could never be controlled the same way again. End of story.